Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on tracking for your audit as a small laboratory. And we're very excited to bring you this webinar today. We have Michelle Robertson with us from the Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority. And really what she's going to present today is her strategy for meeting the standard requirements she's under and her company is under, and explain how her organization is using Qualtracs today to help with workflows and processes, document management, and testing and training to meet those requirements. Some of the key takeaways that you'll leave here today is like how to make your organization or how to take your organization from manual document control systems to automated systems, information retrieval ideas, and also the importance of workflows and traceability and information for audits as well. Once Michelle is done with her presentation, we'll even jump into a Qualtracs instance to kind of walk around with some of the new things that we've got coming out. Couple of housekeeping items before we get started. This is going to be recorded. It is being recorded now. That recording will be available to everybody that is registered for the event. So if you want to watch it again, you have to drop early. The recording will automatically get sent out once it is available to you. We're also going to do a Q&A section. Towards the end of the presentation, we'll take all the questions that you might have and make sure that we go through those and get them answered for you. So if you have something that pops up in the middle of the conversation or the demo, don't hesitate to put that out there and we'll be happy to address that. So my name is Karen Arriviaga, and I'm an account executive here at Qualtracs. If you've attended one of our webinars before, you have probably heard my voice. We do have a mix of attendees on today as well. A lot of customers, people have never heard of Qualtracs, and then even some that have. So I just want to give you a quick overview of who we are. We are a compliance management software platform specifically designed to manage quality initiatives. Organizations turn to Qualtracs when they're looking to reduce or eliminate the burden associated with manual or paper-based systems. We've been around for about 27 years. Our parent company was pursuing ISO certification. And at the end of the day, we're looking for a way to streamline that process and ensure that no details were overlooked. So they started building software to help manage that. And ultimately, that was Qualtracs. They crushed their audit, and the auditor said, "Hey, you really have something here. You should really consider sharing it with others." So since then, our system has really expanded and has really grown, and we help a number of different industries. However, laboratories is something that we really do have a strong presence in with lots of different labs that are under many different types of accreditation needs. So without further ado, let me introduce our speaker today, Michelle. Michelle is a healthcare professional and military veteran with the Secret Service clearance with over 22 years of proven experience in the United States Army. She has accomplished measurable results while leading times of over 50 in a dynamic, fast-paced environment. Michelle possesses a comprehensive background in medical laboratory research, operational planning, instructional delivery, safety, and quality assurance derived from conducting domestic and global operations in the Middle East. She was a recipient of multiple awards for outstanding performance and professionalism. And for the past 3 years, Michelle has been the quality assurance manager at the Environmental Testing Laboratory at Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority in Sequin, Texas. Her career is supported by completion of her Bachelor's of Science in Biology. So Michelle, without further ado, I am going to stop sharing my screen. I invite you to share yours and join us and start going through your presentation.
Thank you so much, Karen.
And I can hear you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. That was a wonderful, wonderful introduction. So when you're getting ready for your ISO 17025 audit, it can be difficult, but with Qualtracs, it is much easier. So who we are, Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority, we were formed in 1933 by the Texas legislature. Our main concerns are water supply and water conservation. So we do have drinking water and wastewater plants that we test for. We have our general office located in Seguin, Texas. So it's very close to San Antonio. A lot of Dallas Cowboys fans out here. Authority extends over a 10-county district in Texas that begins near the headwaters of the Guadalupe and Blanco River Authority, rivers, and ends at the San Antonio Bay. So it's over 400 miles that we actually have authority over. And we are accredited through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ, under ISO 17025. This is our laboratory management team. Ms. Kylie Gudgel, our laboratory director. She's been here almost 15 years. And Jennifer Sanchez has been here 8, and I have been here 3. And this is our laboratory analysts who complete our testing. So in the beginning, when I got here a few years ago to GBRA, and just falling into that quality assurance officer job, they had over 700 documents, hard copy documents, and over 260 bench sheets, which was a lot. And I've came from a medical laboratory position, so a lot of documents is normal, but just the organization of them was not easy. So it was a combination of shared drives, manuals, binders, and then another separate electronic archive system that was pretty archaic and very difficult to use, and it would go down a lot, so you couldn't retrieve your documents. We also had hard copies of SOPs that were not all the same version, and those bench sheets. And of course, we had that overflowing file cabinets, and all those were not located in the same area. So definitely for an audit, that is not good if you need to retrieve some documents and you have to go to another building to get it. They're hoping you're not creating it or something like that. So I definitely wanted to change that. So what happened, we did have some personnel turnover, and there was no continuity or flow of information and tracking ability. We did get a deputy lab director, but they had put some of the quality assurance officers' duties on the deputy lab director, which was difficult trying to do 2 jobs. The SOP updates weren't completely in a timely manner for the staff to use because we were using a signature page. So sometimes the lab director would not sign it the same day that I or the deputy lab director signed it. So technically it shouldn't be in use, but the staff would be using those documents even though they hadn't been signed. And then we were short-staffed, which we couldn't assign additional tasks to an overworked staff as far as looking through SOPs, updating them, make sure that those signature pages were good. We did have equipment, hardware, and software updates. A lot of equipment was down during some of those updates, and it was difficult to update the SOP with the new equipment information. And software updates were infrequent due to cost. We did have like a homegrown system they were using that was Excel, but it was not user-friendly. So this is an example of our document approval process pre-Qualtracs, and I know that slide is quite busy, but I wanted to illustrate how it was archaic and pretty difficult before Qualtracs for my lab. So the author would put the document on the share drive and email the supervisor. The supervisor would review, and then a lot of emails would go around. And we all know that if people go on leave or people are sick or they're out, most emails, you send it and you're hoping the person reads it. Qualtracs has a functionality that you can assign things when people are out of the loop. And so things keep moving, which I love. And then with our old process, those comments would go back and forth until we went to the QAO, and then we would do the approval and then review and approve and then print a copy and then notify everybody that we had that printed copy. And then we would chase down another approver signature for that page. So we had 3 or 4 pages just of signatures that we had to get. And right in that second line there is where those signatures and dates wouldn't match. And when we had the audit that I reviewed when I first got here a few years ago, there were over 60 instances that the auditor noted on our SOPs where we had deficiencies. Then we would produce a PDF copy and put that on the share drive. But of course, that PDF was difficult to update unless you updated the actual hard copy. And then I would archive any old ones or try to find them all, because we know if we have printed documents, those documents are considered controlled documents. And this was a quick example of the signature page, and not really a great one, but here you can see that they were signed on the same day. So that document was good. But here's an example of this person, Michelle, did not sign. She actually prepared the document, because we do have our analysts put in their input, but the approval happened way before. Not sure why she hadn't signed it before then, but this document was in use by the staff prior to her signing it. So that, of course, was an audit finding for a deficiency. So where we wanted to go, I had come from the military, and we had a homegrown system that one of our IT individuals had made that was computer-based, but it was just a quality document system. We wanted a quality management system that we could use without having programming expertise. I wanted to be able to have it and someone else be able to manage it without having program expertise. I wanted pre-configured template solutions so we could rapidly deploy SOPs in our cars, hopefully a drag and drop system that would take all our hard copy documents, all those PDFs, and put it in a pre-configured template for us. And then I wanted to be able to keep all documents in one place and have improved document retrieval and traceability for the staff, and so we could be more efficient doing internal and external audits. We also wanted to have the documents be kept up to date, and revisions are tracked to help with audit readiness. If anybody's ever updated a Word document with track changes, we know that those bubbles can get crazy if you're trying to print them out for an auditor. And then we also just wanted to reduce publication errors. So we implemented in May of 2018. That was our project kickoff. We had the system set up, which was awesome. And then we had on-site training the 15th and the 16th. And that on-site training, I did have 3 of my staff members, my laboratory director and my project manager there. And we actually set up a lot of the templates and changed them and workflows that we're still continuing to use today. So the on-site training was definitely awesome. And then we had a post check-in, and then I started copying files, and we had over 27,000, files. And I began copying them on May 28th. And I was done completing that file transfer by June 4th. And then we wrapped up the post-training and the project wrap up. And then I trained my staff and to be able to check out documents, how to navigate Qualtracs. And there's a help guide, and that will assist you in that. You didn't even have to prepare that. The training for your staff will be there. I got input and suggestions from the staff for my updates. And then we went and made those updates, and then we were ready for our audit in September of 2018. And our TCQ audit was October. We gained me as a full-time quality assurance officer, and then the deputy lab director could focus on her primary duties. And then with Qualtracs, we gained all those things that we were looking for. Those pre-configured templates, it was enabled, and you saw from the implementation that it was a rapid deployment. It was a short implementation time, and I didn't have to go to a programming class. And the supportability and automatic upgrades, we went ahead and went with the hosted system. And since we've been on the hosted system from the beginning, any updates when you're on the hosted system come automatically. So if you are thinking about being hosted or hosted, I would lean toward being hosted, because those updates are awesome. And you don't have to wait on them, and you know they're going to come automatic. We also gained the error rate was definitely greatly reduced. There weren't any more wrong copies published, or 2 of the same SOP in one lab or in one area that wasn't signed. Header typos and notification errors were reduced as well. And then one thing that we gained that I wasn't thinking of gaining is that the responsibility and accountability rests with the employees. As you saw from the pic of my staff, the staff is young. I think the median age is 25. So they felt more engaged once Qualtracs was online to make updates, make changes, make process improvements. So they took ownership of not just their lab bench, but the entire lab as a whole. And Qualtracs brought that and assisted in bringing that out of the staff, which was evidenced in us having a great audit a few weeks ago with only 10 deficiencies from 70 deficiencies before. So where we're headed, again, those pre-configured template solutions for those SOPs and corrective actions, reduce those publication errors, and keep those documents up to date and track them for audit readiness. You can set up proficiency tests and various lab training with minimal effort. That's what my one goal is for this FY. Track employee training progress and performance, and then centralize all relevant data in one place that can be accessed from any mobile platform. So especially if I know if a lot of people were working from home and had their laptops, or if they were given an iPad, or Qualtracs will size itself on the mobile platform that you're using, and all the functionality is still there, which was really awesome. And that helped us actually since coronavirus hit. So here's an example of what our old SOP header and signature page was like. A lot of information in those signature pages there. And now this same SOP, how we went from the hard copy and SOPs that were printed and signed to the electronic one was we came up with this custom field that is what I titled the pre-Qualtracs revision. So that way an auditor could tie back the Qualtracs ID for this new SOP with the old one, the old hard copy one. And our auditor, especially this year, especially appreciated that, because we didn't make new SOPs, we just put them into Qualtracs. So that was a good link there. And then how about the issue of printing pages or having uncontrolled documents out if they had the signature page on them? Our old footer was just our standard information, but our new SOP footer, if anyone prints anything from our system, it'll say printed documents are considered uncontrolled documents. And I did ask our auditor when he went through, he did see, sometimes the analysts will have a page or notes on a page. And he said, I saw that all of them had uncontrolled documents on it, so it wasn't an issue. So I was glad. That was a suggestion from one of the staff to put that on there. So that was awesome. And then for the external audit, you have a management system and those technical requirements, document control and management review, and definitely those corrective actions. And then of course, the technical, the training records, equipment records, proficiency tests, and those data packets. And this slide is just showing that those management requirements, where Qualtracs can assist. The management system can definitely be used, Qualtracs can, and document control, as far as updating, knowing how many documents you have, knowing what stage they're in. You can do a workflow for complaints or any kind of improvements, for corrective actions, preventive actions, control of records. And then there's an internal audit workflow and a management workflow. And I'm sure Karen will explain that the workflow is already built and pre-configured, and you can tailor it to your lab. Because I have a small lab of 8 staff, but we do service over 150 customers regularly. And it is very easy to use the workflows. And again, it gives your staff the ownership of having a problem, seeing a problem, and fixing it, and fixing it quickly because you have Qualtracs on board. And with those technical requirements, there's a training module that you can use for your demonstrations of capability. I'm getting our supply person into the equipment workflow, so that will help send you automatic emails when a preventive maintenance is due, or if you need to update a lease, or any kind of thing that you can think of with equipment or supplies. And handling of calibration and test items. Our laboratory director handles some of our calibration, and she uses a workflow now to complete that. It'll let her know when they're due, send her an email to update her. And that's one of the great functionalities about Qualtracs. Once you set it up, it will send those automatic reminders for you. And then we are trying to link the reporting, the results with our LIMS, but that's way in the future. So in summary, we went from a manual document control system to a complete automated quality management system. Information retrieval is definitely easy. It's all in one spot in the cloud, hosted by Qualtracs. You can have workflows, reports, anything tracked, and have track changes to assist in traceability of information for your audits. And it's a very efficient, user-friendly system. Again, 27,000 documents we were able to drop and have identified in Qualtracs in less than a couple weeks. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Michelle, thank you so very much. I think that what's nice about hearing, your experiences and how you've used the system and what it was like before moving to Qualtracs. I think that whether you're on the call and you're a current customer or you're somebody that would even, considering a system, or even in the very beginning steps of not even realizing what systems can do, it's always great to hear that perspective, I think. So at this point, what I'm going to do is reshare my screen and actually take you in through a tour of Qualtracs and kind of give you an idea of what we're doing with the system and how organizations are using it today. So much of what Michelle's story was around was, how her small laboratory is using the system. I think one of the big misconceptions that we will sometimes get when we talk to people is that people sometimes think that you have to be a large organization to really take advantage of automation software. And the reality is that when you look at the number of people that use Qualtracs, I would say probably the majority of the people that use our system are sometimes 25 to 50 people in an organization or less. It's really interesting to kind of see that even organizations that are as small as 8 people like Michelle are seeing the value out of a system like Qualtracs because it allows you just to get more some of those administrative tasks taken care of by a system and through some of that automation. When you think about how you're currently doing quality, especially if you're doing it with a manual system, how much time are you spending tracking down a paper trail or manual documents or updating your master document list? How often are you reaching out to people to make sure that they're being trained? Or if corrective actions, are you passing around a piece of paper that's sitting on somebody's desk that could potentially get lost? And then when you throw COVID into the mix, and we have different time schedules, or people are at the organization at different times and periods, or some people are working from home, it can really, become a burden. So, and that's where we see some of our smaller organizations really consider bringing in quality management systems like Qualtracs. So Michelle went through her presentation. She talked about using documents, training, workflows, all of these different aspects of our system. Qualtracs is an all-in-one compliance management solution. So what that means is that when you purchase Qualtracs, we're going to give you all of this functionality in one location. And the idea of having it in one location really gives you the ability to have better visibility. It makes it easier. It lessens the amount of work that you're doing for audit prep as well. One of the most popular features that we're getting a lot of interest in recently is our workflow area. Workflows with Qualtracs are ways to automate different processes for your organization. I'm actually going to pop into a Qualtracs instance and take you through a little tour. So with these workflows, and I'm going to click over here to my workflow area of Qualtracs and show you a couple of examples. So I mentioned what we're doing with these workflows is we're taking processes that are specifically related to the standards that you're under. These happen to be very specific for environmental laboratories. But whether you're an environmental lab or another type of lab that's just under 17025 requirements, or maybe you're not a lab and you're under some other type of requirements and compliance pressure, these workflows usually are speaking specifically to some of the actions you have to have processes for in your quality system. So when you purchase Qualtracs, what we're going to do is put our best-in-class workflows into your system to get you started. So for this case, we're talking about audit workflows, corrective action requests, customer complaint tracking, demonstration of capability, equipment maintenance, nonconformance reports, and vendor approval. We also have some, depending on what vertical you're in, for risk assessment, management review, proficiency testing, validations. So just depending on what area that you would need help with, we have some different options. Some of these that you see on this list, especially if you've attended some of our webinars before, are brand new. We have just created them and we're really excited. Every time we create some new workflows for our customers and our new prospects to use, we usually vet them with other customers that use Qualtracs to make sure that they align with how they would want to automate some of these processes. And so we've gotten some really great feedback on these. One of the ones I'm going to talk through right now is equipment maintenance. Equipment maintenance and scheduling calibrations and scheduling PMs to occur is probably one of the areas that we're hearing the most buzz about recently. With some of the changes in the standards that have been happening, equipment tracking is actually one of the top nonconformances that we've heard from the accrediting bodies of where people are finding errors and need solutions to help make sure that they're holding themselves accountable for the processes they put in their organization in place for that organization. So really what we're doing with this equipment maintenance workflow is just tracking the different times of when a piece of equipment is going to be calibrated. So we're just setting up that equipment and capturing that information. And then we're actually going on to the next step of scheduling when the next occurrence is going to happen. And when that next occurrence is going to happen, what happens in Qualtracs is going to re-pop up in somebody's inbox, letting them know that they need to have a step to complete within our system. So if I scroll up at the top, let's go through some of these examples. You would actually create an equipment list within your Qualtracs instance. There you would get to choose what that equipment was. So let's say it's going to be a microscope. I can choose the manufacturer, the model number. So we'll just say that this is the model number. The serial number looks like this for the piece of equipment that I have. You can even bring in fields for location. Is a calibration required for this piece of equipment? You're guiding somebody within your organization through the necessary steps that align with the process that you have in place. Now, one of the points that Michelle pointed out is that Qualtracs is very configurable. These workflows are something that you will be able to configure for your organization. I think being in a compliance-driven organization, we ourselves use our own product. We kind of understand that every single organization is different. So our philosophy is we want to make sure that you have the tools to make adjustments to your system to best fit your organization's needs, but also help grow with your organization over time as your quality management needs expand as well. Once the initial information about that piece of equipment is entered, then we start logging the calibration information. So let's pretend that we have this piece of equipment that needs to be calibrated. And so I go through that calibration today. What are the expected results? You would put something like that in. What were the actual results? Therefore, you can make sure, was it in range or not? Yes or no. What was the associated documentation? So let's pretend that you have a piece of equipment that you've got to get a third party to come in to calibrate. Maybe they give you a certificate of calibration. This is a great place to upload that external file so you have it a part of this record. Again, the idea with these quality management systems is making sure you have one location for all of your information. And then you would type in your name here. Was it out of service? When is the next date for service? This is a this is a big deal right here. The next date for taking out a service and the next date for maintenance is actually how you schedule the next person in line to get notified when they need to take action. So let me just choose a user who happens to be Trevor so this can work. If I go here to the date of next maintenance, well, let's pretend that this piece of equipment needs to be recalibrated in December. I'm actually going to choose December 16th, 2020. And then when I hit this and complete maintenance, it's going to close that record. Once that record is closed, guess what? When December 16th, 2020 comes up, that workflow is going to pop right back up in Qualtracs and ask you to start going through that calibration again. This is where the automation really is going to be helpful, because it's going to take something where maybe you have a manual process today where you're typing in information, you're trying to set reminders in your calendar to make sure that these are done in a timely manner. You don't have to worry about remembering to do that anymore, or worrying that you might accidentally snooze one of those notifications. Qualtracs is going to send those reminders to you. Those reminders that are being sent out by our system are also coordinating with this legend up here. So any action that you need to perform in Qualtracs, there's going to be emails that get sent out every time something is newly added, approaching its due date, late, or needs to be expedited. And this is that huge accountability feature with our system. Because if something gets to the expedited step and it has not been addressed, guess what? Managers are now being notified so they can step in. So if you want your employees to make sure that they're getting things done on a timely manner, they'll get it done because they don't want managers to step in. And so Qualtracs really starts handling a lot of those administrative tasks, and that idea that you no longer have to chase that paper trail. The big part of Qualtracs is also just visibility into the system. You're able to run reports within Qualtracs to be able to look up information. I'm actually going to do an advanced search right now of equipment just to show you a way to see how some of this information is being tracked. With an advanced search, it's a quick, easy way to quickly get to that record that we just created. You can see that this is the record itself. If I wanted to click it and go into that record, the information, the current step, and so on. Let's look at that record. Let's pretend that it's 1216. Well, now I want to do an additional calibration or maintenance. Well, I would just add a row here and then perform the next calibration. So let's pretend that it is December. It's getting close to that holiday season. What were the expected results? What were the actual results? What was it within range? You can get the idea of how that is going to work here with the system itself. And so as you're collecting more information around this, everything's going to be located in one location. Think about that, what that means for your auditor, right? Now with some audits happening remotely and some audits, if they do come on site, they're asking you questions and they want to see these records. Well, instead of going and pulling binders or trying to flip through actual paper documents and records, you quickly just run a report in Qualtracs and that information will automatically come up for you. Another workflow that we'll talk about today is another one that's really relatively new to Qualtracs, and it's called demonstration of capability. If you are in an environmental laboratory, this is something that the TNI NELAC standards speak to specifically. However, if you're not environmental, sometimes you might be doing this through different competency tracking as well. So do know that you are able to take workflows like this and adjust them to best fit your organization's needs. With demonstrations of capability, what we're doing is providing you a way to show the records that these are happening and that they're happening in a complete manner. So again, what this allows you to do is be able to prove to your auditor that you are following the processes that you have put in place for your organization. And by collecting these records, having them in all one location just makes that process significantly easier and is truly eliminating that manual burden. So if I scroll down here to the bottom and show you the diagram, I'll just go through a couple of these steps. So first, we are just simply selecting what type of demonstration of capability it's going to be and who's going to be doing it, and then sending them that information. So if I scroll up here to the top, let's go through some of this. Well, this is going to be an initial DOC. You can tell that you can also have initial ones and ones that are ongoing. And then you're going to choose the analyst who's going to be going through this. This can be an employee list that you have in your organization that you would choose from. But ultimately, what you're doing here is choosing who's going to be next in line to get the notification that they have to take action. I'm going to pick Trevor because I am Trevor, so I get the next step. What area do you need to test? This is going to be very specific either to the standard you're under or maybe your organization. We are going to teach you how to make adjustments to these workflows. And as Michelle said, that is something that you will have the ability to do in your own time, and you don't feel like you have to reach out to us to help with that. However, if you do need help, we're always there to help and you have support. What matrix are you doing? And then what information about your codes and your analytes. And so we could say that our code is something like this. More than likely, if you are using this workflow, you're actually going to put in the codes that your organization usually is following in through a select list for this demo system. And because it's a best-in-class workflow, we keep that blank and we don't bring in the thousands of codes that you could have. But usually this is something that you customize, and then we would choose the analyte. What methods are performed, again, you could click here and go right into the information and choose it here, or we would just type in some information, and then you could talk about your method or your SOP. Once this information has been taken, the next step is to send it on to the analyst for them to go ahead and start that DOC. If I click this button here, you'll notice that there's an arrow connecting these steps. Anytime you see an arrow in Qualtracs, whether it pertains to workflows or even within our document management system workflow process, those represent those email notifications and escalations that are happening in our system. So imagine, as soon as I click this, Trevor is now receiving an email notification and an inbox notification letting him know that he has requirements that he needs to do within this process. He'll get this, he'll read the information that he needs to do a DOC. This is all the information of what he would need to do in that process. And then he has additional information that he needs to fill out. What specific SOPs are being used for this analyst? This is a great way to pull information from your own document tree. So if you're collecting all of your SOPs and managing them in our system, in Qualtracs, you would just come choose an SOP that is appropriate and add it here. What was the date of the analysis? What was the summary of the analysis? And for time reasons, we won't go through all of the details. But then also, what are the supporting documentations or anything like that that you would want to add here? Once that's done, you would be able to submit that to the next appropriate steps. Now, depending on what you're doing, if this is ongoing or an initial type of DOC, this is where you'll take it to the next step and additional things could happen. If it's an initial DOC, maybe it gets approved and then it's going to close. If it's something that's ongoing, then it'll continue collecting more and more information from you and guiding you through that process. However, at the end of the day, what your quality team is going to be able to do is report on this information. So if I go to my reports, I have a report within this demo system that I can run that actually shows you what some of these results could look like. With all of our reporting, it is very easy to use. You can create your own reports or use system reports that come within Qualtracs. You also have the ability to filter on specific information. So if I want to be filtering on the analysts or the analytes or the areas of testing, I could do that. If I run this report, I can actually see information like the current step, the type of DOC, any information from the analyst, the type of testing, and so on. All of this in one location. All of our reports can be exported to CSV or Excel files, and you can also adjust these reports and make them your own. So lots of interesting things that you can do with Qualtracs. I mentioned that these are best-in-class workflows that you can bring in, and some of these will come pre-populated in your system. You're not restricted to just best-in-class workflows. With Qualtracs, you do have the ability to build your own processes. So not only taking our best-in-classes and configuring them to you, but actually building some from scratch. We're going to give you a workflow designer that works very similar to Microsoft Visio as a client tool where you could actually build out your process and push it into Qualtracs, then go step by step, creating the different fields at each step. So we'll often get questions like, well, what else can you do with Qualtracs and systems like this, especially with small organizations, because small organizations really try to maximize what they do have. So we've seen organizations use Qualtracs from everything from like onboarding and creating onboarding workflows, simple checks within the laboratory that have to be done on a daily basis. So if you have to do any type of humidity logs or cleaning logs, balance checks that happen on a daily basis, all of those are quick processes that could even be generated in our system as well. So really the sky's the limit. We don't limit what you can actually build in your Qualtracs instance. And I think when you talk to our customers and you hear from their experiences, they'll talk to some of the exciting things that they've been able to build in theirs. As much as the software is a big part of the Qualtracs offering, we actually do more than just have software. We spend a lot of time making sure that what our offering is something that our customers are going to find useful and helpful, and that we're supporting them in any way we possibly can. Um, with our customers, we really want the feedback. We want to know what's going well. We want to know what we can improve on, because that's how we better our offering to make sure that we are addressing your needs. Our goal is to be that go-between between the accrediting body and the customer, as our system is the one that's being used to help prove conformance to the standards that you are under. A part of your Qualtracs subscription includes unlimited technical support. We're always there to help you out. The first year that you purchase Qualtracs, we'll actually go through some hands-on training to make sure that you are equipped with what you need to be able to implement Qualtracs for your organization. We have our own user conference, which Michelle was actually attended to, so we can it's a great place for people to come and actually share best practices. In fact, when Michelle was here last, we had a number of laboratories kind of in the same vertical. They connected and started sharing workflows amongst each other, and so we really do help promote some of that networking at some of our events. Hopefully we will be able to have those in 2021. We also do routine customer engagement. We're always reaching out to our customer base to make sure that you're getting the most out of your system and investment, and wondering how we can help out. And if you ever need additional help or want us to create workflows for you, we can do that as well. Well, that brings me to the end. So Michelle, do you want to reach out or jump back on and we can go through some questions?
Absolutely, I'm here.
Great. And everybody who else is still on, please feel free to put those questions in and we will go through them. Give me 1 second to kind of read up on what has come in, and then I'll be right back. Hold on 1 second. Thanks, Joshua. So Joshua was asking about how you're actually creating workflows and stuff from top to bottom, and he's going to reach out to our support department to get more direct help. So great, Joshua, thank you, and I'm sure they'll be able to help you. We'll even let them know that you'll be reaching out. Michelle, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What would you tell somebody considering an EQMS, and why is it something that they should consider?
An automated quality management system,
Mm-hmm.
I would say it would make the quality assurance officer very happy, or audits and your bosses, because the retrievability and the accountability was so easy with Qualtracs. And there are other management, quality software out there, but it was not as a full document control, training, and everything that Qualtracs offers. So I would definitely say the automated way is the way to go, and looking at other things that are out there. Qualtracs has the best, and it's easy to use. It's really user friendly.
Great. Can you take some time to kind of explain the difference between some of those document repository type options versus the automation? And because we get questions like that often. It's like, well, I see this one over here that has document management, but Qualtracs offers that automation. Can you speak to that?
Yes, that automation. So it's not just the file cabinet like some of the other products and software offer. You can take your, say, a standard operating procedure and update it in real time. and it will send those automatic emails to the person. And a lot of times those are where we forget to do things that, oh, it hasn't been signed yet, or it needs to be signed, or those questions like when you're doing your annual standard operating procedure review, you can set the Qualtracs will allow you to set it up to send emails as reminders. I can speak from experience that our we had our audit with the TCEQ, our accrediting body, about a month ago, and that was one of the things that he really was excited about and interested in, was the properties and how the emails go out and remind the staff. So it's not an individual doing that. You set it up in Qualtracs, and Qualtracs does it for you. And it all was in one place. I had my laptop, and if I got hit by a bus or the lottery game, somebody else could take it over for me because it's all in one place. You don't have to think of the secret key with the file cabinet that's often someplace nobody knows where it is.
Right, right. Well, and when you think about it from that perspective with COVID, when COVID happened, depending on what type of organization you're with, I mean, obviously laboratories are pretty critical. So some of you guys were able to stay open. We had some organizations that are ours that are under different types of industries that had to shut down. And that meant that their quality system and all their documentation and such were still at the organization. And so having something that could be done through a hosted system, they're able to just jump on a web browser, get into their QMS system, and it's all there. They can continue training, they can continue working on corrective actions and things, even when the business itself was kind of closed. So it's been interesting and eye opening to see, how these systems can be utilized even in the middle of a pandemic.
Yes. To caveat on that, Karen, we were able to, Qualtracs was able to allow our analysts to actually telecommute, which you're saying,
Right. Oh, great.
laboratory, how can analysts telecommute? Well, we worked it out in being our small lab. We had a small staff that would come in, they would get their daily on bench work completed, and then they were able to go home and telecommute and work on those SOPs or those workflows because it's all in one spot in the cloud and they could grab it from there. So when,
Oh, that's wonderful, Michelle.
yeah, especially when the pandemic in March and April, we were, gearing up for the audit. We knew it was going to be at the end of the year. We were so very prepared. I think before the webinar started, I looked and we only had 3 SOP suggestions. They weren't mistakes; they were just suggestions. So
Mm.
publishing was right. All the updates were there. They were signed on and published on the same day. So those things weren't the issue. Like when when we had our last audit and we had over 60 individual deficiencies about SOP updates or published dates. So it did keep us working through COVID so far.
Oh, great. Well, here's some other questions we've got coming in. This one's from Sarah. How do you get your team on board using the system? Some folks use it more than others, and some can consider it to be a burden.
Oh, hi, Sarah. How I got them? I'm an excited person, and I believe in the money. And I just spoke to another potential customer, and the guy said he was an old curmudgeon. He didn't want to use the computer. He liked the system that they had, and most laboratorians are born process improvers. And I showed them how some of the processes that they were doing in the file cabinet, filing, finding things were easier with this one system. I also showed them how it was very user friendly. The drag and drop and attaching documents, exporting reports to Excel or CLSV. I mean, I just really showed them the system. And when they saw how easy it was, they wanted to come on board. And I do have some people, I use it every day, several times a day, but I do have teams of people that don't use it every day, only if they're doing workflows or doing some type of training. But they all look at their inbox every day because you will have those updates there for you. Hopefully that answered that for you, Miss Karen.
Great.
Sarah.
Here's another question. This one's from Nicole. How does it work with limbs? And I mean, I can answer this, or do you want to talk about kind of the difference between your limb system
You
and
you
Qualtracs?
could
You want me
take
to do
you
it?
could take that one,
Okay,
Karen.
great. So limb systems and quality management systems like ours usually work kind of, hand in hand. We both have very important purposes in the laboratory. You know, the best analogy I've ever heard, and this was come from a consultant that works with different laboratories, is like one is a baker, the other one is a chef. Though they are working potentially in the same kitchen, at the end of the day, you're not going to hire the chef to make your wedding cake. You're probably going to hire the baker. And that's a very good analogy for kind of how Qualtracs and limbs kind of exist. We would never say that we are a limb system. You don't use us to track results within your laboratory, right? The limb systems that are out there are going to be the best options that you have for that. And however, there are some limb systems out there that say that they have a quality piece, but when you really look into that quality piece, what you find is that it's really limited to sometimes our document repository and doesn't offer the automation that, say, quality management systems have. So, to expand on your question, how does it work together? Sometimes you actually have the ability to link limb systems with quality management systems. Qualtracs itself, we have an API that is available to our customers that allows you to link, that has the ability to have handshakes with other systems if that other system also has an API. At the end of the day, you would just have to have resources on your team that would be able to build the bridge between the systems and maintain that bridge. But it is possible. We have some people doing it today and using that API. So if you have more questions about that or want to talk about specific instances, definitely let us know and we can go into that. In fact, let me change my screen so you can see our contact information if you do want to reach out. Is it possible to add results sheets to Qualtracs for analysts to print and record data on? And I think the question, I would want to know exactly what type of results you're trying to track,
Mhm.
and what your ultimate goal would be. Michelle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I call Qualtracs our system of record for any result sheets that the analysts use. So we call them bench sheets here. So the info sheets that they use are bench sheets that they use every day. They are first put into Qualtracs. They'll have that header and footer information put on there, and it will have an ID. So now it's in Qualtracs. So then my analyst can go to Qualtracs and copy it to their desktop because it's a bench sheet or info sheet that they use every day. But it has that same ID number on it. So it's traceable, trackable because it came from Qualtracs. And then they can just use that sheet, update it as necessary every day. So most of my staff do that on a daily basis.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In a training module, can you set up tests and trainings to keep training records and competencies? Yes, that is definitely a feature of our system. In fact, if I take my PowerPoint and I go back, wow, I go back to this slide, testing and training. It wasn't an area that we showed today on the webinar, but it's definitely a part of Qualtracs that is used pretty widely amongst our customer base. And at the end of the day, it's everything from quick acknowledgement tests to make sure that somebody has read and signed off on a document that's been published to more detailed trainings that somebody would need to go through, maybe onboarding trainings or safety trainings. Like, for instance, at Qualtracs, we have one for fire safety that comes out every January. And when we come back to the office, we've got to take this fire safety test to make sure that we know how to handle ourselves in case of an emergency. So that can be recurring. That can be something that's sent out on a regular basis. So lots of things that you can do there. If you ever want to dive into that portion of the product a little bit deeper or some of the other areas, please let us know. We're happy to give you a tour and see if it's something that would fit your needs. This is from Molly. Molly, I'm new to all of this. I know Qualtracs exists, but not much else. Currently have no management system. It's all manual-ish. I like that word, manual-ish. My question regards archive document retrieval. One of our biggest difficulties is retrieving archive protocols for discovery orders. It's difficult to find which documents are active during that time of testing or the report under discovery. Is it possible? Just a time consuming task. Is there a way on Qualtracs to make it easier for all protocols active during a specified date range? Yes. And Molly, based on the fact that you said discovery orders, I'm assuming you're a forensic laboratory. Is that correct? We actually have organizations that have purchased Qualtracs recently specifically to help with discovery orders. And so if this is something you would like to dive into, I can connect you with our team who works with those organizations for them to kind of give you a tour of how that is being used. At the end of the day, the reporting with Qualtracs is going to be very um, I can say configurable, but you have the ability to really drill into specific information, including date range. So if you just within document reports themselves, you can choose a specific time period that you need to access the document and be able to pull that up to see what was being used. We're tracking the full audit trail for you automatically in Qualtracs pertaining to document automation. So what that means is that we have record of every single document version in Qualtracs and when it was being used. And so that's where some of that reporting is just help you get to that quicker. But that's definitely something that we would love to have a conversation with you about and see if that's something that we could help you out with. Do you still print out and keep things for archiving, or does the system handle that? Michelle, you want to answer that?
Definitely, Miss Nicole. We do still print out the analysts print out their info sheets and bench sheets, but that's their daily work. But SOPs and other things, they usually just get it straight from Qualtracs. I did ask my auditor why they were on site. If we did print, I do have that. It's an uncontrolled document. But our printing has went down significantly, and it's archived in Qualtracs. So you don't have to print as much, but their daily sheets, they still do.
Great. How can Qualtracs prepare? How can Qualtrac prepare a management review according to ISO 17025-2017? It's a great question. And what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to take you onto our website really fast. We actually did a webinar with A2LA about this topic, and we walked through the management review workflow that some organizations use in our system. So let me get to the area where that would be located and show you what that is. Pretty much if you go to our videos, if you've been on a number of our webinars, and some of you definitely have, you know that we do a lot of webinars. A lot of them are educational based. We actually will pair and work with accrediting bodies like ANAB and A2LA. They're actually customers of ours as well. They use Qualtracs themselves for their own accreditation efforts. And we'll do partner webinars. And really, these are educational events and options for our customers and our prospects to come and learn more of what they can do to better improve their systems. And we did one recently on management review. And I point that one out because pretty much what we do is, and rather than me going through this whole list, I will find that recording and put it into the chat so you can have it. Is we actually have a workflow for management review where you schedule the management review to happen, and then it gives you a form where you choose what areas of management review that you want to do at a specific time. And so you can actually say, okay, I want to go through all of my corrective action requests, and I want to go through all of our customer complaints this time, but I still have all these other areas that still need to be evaluated at a different time. And so it just allows you to track everything to make sure that you are touching on every aspect of management review, but then more importantly, you have the record that it was completed, who was involved, you have that full audit trail, so then you can turn around and show that to your auditor that it happened and it was a complete record. It even involves steps to be able to identify opportunities for improvement and risks. It can kick off workflows that are in our system if a corrective action request is necessary because of a nonconformance. So It's a very involved process. If you want to dive into that further, we'd be happy to show you and give you a tour of what that could look like for you. Great question. I really like management review because it allows you to talk about a lot of other areas in the system too. Which LIMS systems does Qualtracs work best with? That's hard to know. At the end of the day, what we really control is what our API is able to do. And so it really just depends on our customers and what they have capability wise. And if that LIMS system that you have also has API functionality, that's the key, right? That's the handshake between the two systems. If the LIMS system that you have has API functionality as well, and that bridge can be gapped or can be done, then it's possible. Is there a chemical inventory aspect of Qualtracs? Inventory is hard with our system. So, and I'll tell you why. Qualtracs doesn't do calculations. So the answer is kind of. At the end of the day, what you're using Qualtracs for is just to collect the records. So where inventory usually gets asked is organizations want the system to be able to calculate how much is left within a specific inventory. That's not something that Qualtracs can do. And I tell you that we're always very straightforward in what our capabilities are, what we can and cannot do. However, we have seen organizations put elements of the inventory process in just to track, like maybe it's tracking reagents, when things were created, when they need to be disposed of, and things like that. But we would not characterize ourselves as a full inventory management system. Here's another one. We are a global IT organization that follows QM initiatives, tracked IT incidents, QM document management, readiness for IT audits. Does Qualtracs fit these initiatives with our global IT organization? Sure. Yep. Let's have a conversation and see. In terms of IT ticketing and incidents, sure, that could be a workflow that could actually be built. One of our more recent environmental laboratories that purchased Qualtracs a couple months ago, that was one of the discussions that we had with them was around IT ticketing. And is there a way to actually have our IT team get notified as people within the organization enter in information about concerns they have or problems that they're having, and let the IT team know? Yep, that's an option. QM document management, storing, approving, reviewing, etc. The whole 9 yards our system does. I think when you look back at why Qualtracs exists, that is why we were built. It was to help manage some of that core ISO requirements there. Does Qualtracs fit these initiatives for our readiness for IT audits? Let's talk and find out what your requirements are to see if this would be something that would fit your needs. I think we're always up to having a discussion to see if we would be a good fit for you. And I see there's some questions that are coming in the chat as well. Oh, if my audio was going in and out. Is there a help guide reference resource on the Qualtracs website that covers the document date range function? I'm not sure if it's on our website. We'll reach out to you and see if I can find an answer for you of where you could get some of that information. My guess is that if you are a customer, I would check the help guide that you can get access to within your Qualtracs instance, or reach out to our through our support portal. Oh, and look, one of Leah from our team actually put the link to the management review webinar link in the chat. So if you have interest in checking out that presentation, please go there and see that. Do you have any general videos or webinars about the Qualtracs system? Absolutely. If you are interested in seeing that, let me actually point you to another place on our website. We have some videos that you can share. We also have a 30-minute introductory webinar every other week. The next one is next week. So if you go, sorry, I'm going through a lot of things, to our event calendar on our website, you'll actually see that our next 30-minute webinar is on November 5th. This is a great way to see Qualtracs in action. You can come to as many of these as you want to, but we quickly go through the whole system, not just focusing on workflows. All right. Just making sure I've answered all of the questions, and I think we have. Okay. Well, Michelle, thank you so very much for your time and sharing your story. I know that customers and prospects, when I talk to them, they always appreciate it, hearing it from actual users of the system. So I really thank you so very much for your willingness to help us with that today.
You're welcome. And if anybody that was listening or may have come on late, if they want any information from me or training slides or anything that I use with my staff, I'd be happy to share that as well.
Wonderful. And if anybody wants any links or anything like that, really, you can reach me at Karen@Qualtracs.com. Even if I wouldn't be your account executive, I can point you in the right direction. So if you do need to reach out, please do. You can even send a note to webinar@Qualtracs.com, and we'll make sure that we assist you in any way we possibly can. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. And if anything comes up, please let us know how we can help you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.